Good day to all of you in the Republic of Korea and wherever you are around the world. My name is Dr. Zabi Bozari and I'm speaking to you from London. I'm very pleased to be part of 2021 Korea Maritime Week. And my point of discussion with you is future energy transition for reduction of maritime GHG emissions and the need for international cooperation. The content of my presentation, briefly, I will look at the regulatory framework for shipping decarbonization first. Then I will move to show you the role that fuel can play in shipping decarbonization. Then I will talk about the options which we have got as far as the fuel is concerned. And of course, the need for finance is part of it always, and why we need to internationally cooperate with each other. First, international regulatory framework is defined by the IMO. And as far as the energy efficiency or greenhouse gas emissions, or you may call it decarbonization, is concerned, the diagram shows you all what we have got now. You see a smaller circles, which already indicates the regulation in place. And then you have got the bigger circle, which says IMO GHG strategy 2018. On the regulations which are in place, you will see the dates, for example, EEDI 2013, SEM 2013, Data Collection System 2018, EXI 2023, and CII rating 2023. So these are the way regulations has come about. But the most important one is the IMO GHG strategy, which basically provides us with some targets and some kind of roadmap for the future. So without staying on this slide, that you will look at later on in terms of text, this is where we are standing as far as the regulation is concerned. Let me move to the IMO GHG strategy. Of course, the GHG strategy has got the most important element which we need for any transition, and that is where we are going to go. And that is the main targets. In terms of carbon intensity of index of the ships, which basically deals with the existing ships, it says that we need to reduce it by 40% by 2030 and by 70% by 2050. It is a kind of index, energy efficiency index. It needs to be reduced. In terms of absolute total greenhouse gas emissions, the strategy says that it must be reduced by at least by 50% by 2050 as compared to 2008. Strategy also says that shipping should be fully decarbonized by the end of the century. In terms of roadmap and how we are going to get there, the strategy defines what we call short-term measures, mid-term measures, and long-term measures. The short-term measures, as the name implies, is for the short term up to 2023, sorry. And the mid-term is going to be dealt by 2030, and the long-term is 2050. There is a little bit of typo error there, 2050. Now, fuel and energy transition is not part of the short-term measures because it cannot be fixed so quickly. But it is going to be part of the mid-term measures for sure. And definitely it must be part of the long-term measures. Let me move into the fuel side. And before that, let me show you this diagram, which is courtesy of DNV. As you can see, we start from 2008, which is our baseline, and we end up in 2050, which is the target. And you have got 3 color codes there. And these color codes refers to new ship technologies, the light blue, new shipping operation processes, including logistic aspects and the speed, the green one, and then the dark blue is the new low zero carbon fuel. So as far as the experts in the industry are concerned, we don't have any other choice but to pay a lot of attention to fuels, because according to these forecasts, most of the decarbonization aspects would come from the transition of fuel. There would be, of course, some responsibility for ships, shipbuilders, shipping, but the fuel should be there. So that's the role that fuel is playing. It is an important and indispensable role which is played there. Now, in terms of fuels, what are the pathways and what are the type of fuel which are available? This diagram would show you three areas. One is the primary fuels. We have got fossil fuels and renewable sources that we are very interested in the future, okay? Because we need to go here. And then these primary fuels could be converted to different type of final energy or fuel. And you can see we have got synthetic fuels, biofuels, gaseous fuels, hydrogen, and electricity as energy. And finally, there are shipboard pathways, which we normally say liquid pathways, gas pathways, and hybrid electric pathways. The interesting thing about this diagram is that you can see that within this sphere, everything can be converted to everything else. But the most important for us would be to be able to go this route, from the route of renewables to maybe these kind of fuels, and eventually convert them either to liquid or gas or hybrid electric pathways for shipboard application. How this transition would be shaped up in the future? As we move from now, which most of the fuel use is of liquid fuel, 97%, to the 2030, you can see there would be some transition to gas, carbon neutral fuel, and electricity, but not a big one according to this forecast. And then by 2050, this is the forecast that we would still be with fossil fuels, liquid, uptime, maybe 33% and 23%. So fossil fuels still dominates by 2050 according to this forecast. And carbon neutral fuel together with electricity would be around 45%. So this is a kind of transition, but you can see from today, 97% to the future of 33%, it's quite a big change which is going to take place. What type of fuels do we have? Normally, we divide them into biofuels, and there is a list here saying that what is good about biofuel and what is not good. The important thing is that whatever we produce, the production potential is not there yet. That's on the biofuel there. Sustainability is always an issue, and that's the thing that people need to work on. Then we got synthetic fuels, which basically means that you mix and match different fuels, combine them together chemically, and you produce a new fuel. Okay, this process would require energy. And to produce a synthetic fuel, a lot of energy would be needed. And then a lot of material, which again are a type of fuel. Okay, so based on that, we say synthetic fuels could be divided into green and non-green. And to be sure, non-green ones are worse than even the fossil fuels that we are using these days, because they are a kind of fossil fuel converted. So that's the synthetic fuels. And then we have got the last one, which is electrofuels. Any fuel type that is produced using electricity. Of course, electricity could be renewable or non-renewable. So here we say e-fuel that we are talking is hopefully used from electricity. They could be hydrogen, the most simple ones, from water processes, methanol, ethanol, methane, ammonia, anything. In other words, when we have got hydrogen, if we can have carbon somewhere through carbon capture, which is another technology which would be needed, then through synthetic aspects, we could produce different type of fuel. Problem facing, one is of course the technology, but most is high cost at the present time. And the other consideration is greenness. And that's why within the IMO, they are advocating life cycle assessment, and it is part of the IMO GHG strategy. This diagram also shows for the three types of e-fuels like ammonia, hydrogen, and methanol, how the transition would take place. I'm moving to the finance side. There is a big need for finance for this transition. Some people advocate very big numbers. They are early estimates, but they are big, around few $1 trillion. Now the question is that how the shipping costs would be covered, because all this transition to new technologies, new fuel, it would cost. How the compensation would be paid to LDCs and SITs, for example, because some of the countries are advocating that they are suffering a lot because of other countries or shipping, etc. And finally, would there be a need for a general payment for offsetting of shipping emissions? And the answer to that question, that how the finance would be raised, is coming under the banner of carbon pricing for shipping. And it is advocated we need market-based measures. And within this slide, I have put few market-based measures which are being proposed for discussion at the IMO, and IMO MEPC will be discussing about those. The list of the proposed market-based measures is not limited to this one, and I'm sure there will be more in the future. Need for international cooperation, yes, and the main justification for that is that shipping is an international industry, and without international cooperation, we would not be able to transform shipping and go on with this journey. So there would be international collaboration on regulatory aspects, on raising finance, and finally on technical cooperation. I would like to give you this slide on IMO-led international cooperation, which provides you with the list of projects which IMO either has run or they are working on those. And these projects are funded by various countries and international organizations. And within this project, for example, for this list, you can see GHG Smart Program, which is targeted capacity building in SITs and LDC, and it is funded by the Republic of Korea. In conclusions, I would like to say that shipping fuel or energy transition is a basic requirement for achieving the IMO agreed future greenhouse gas targets. There is no other way. Developments of carbon neutral or zero carbon fuels will continue in a number of directions. We don't exactly know where we are heading, but electrofuels, as I mentioned, is most debated by people. Such developments are likely to be linked to renewable electricity and electrofuels. Cost effectiveness and competitiveness of these new fuels is an important issue, okay? After that is, of course, the question of infrastructure for supply and use of these fuels on board ships. Therefore, I would see that regulatory developments may be needed or will be needed to push forward with this transition process. The cost would be very high, and there are, again, proposals on how to cover these costs, and these proposals are generally under the banner of market-based measures. And finally, international cooperation would be a definite part of this whole journey. It was my pleasure to talk to you, and thank you very much for inviting me to this important Maritime Week. Thank you very much.